No mai haere mai, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So for those who don't know me, my name is Nick Smith and I'm the Vice-Chancellor here at Te Inaugural. And it's my enormous privilege tonight to welcome family, friends, distinguished guests, academic and professional colleagues, students in our wider community to the inaugural lecture of Ivy Liu, Professor of Statistics. We've just been talking about Ivy's career, and I often am interested in the sort of personal context within which this extraordinary list of academic achievements appears in my speaking notes. And Ivy was telling me how when she arrived in the June of 2000, she was just 1 month after giving birth to twins, which I can only imagine. And when I read her bio in her career, I really felt that there were sort of three elements of uncertainty, and that was perhaps the first. Uncertainty and perhaps even chaos. I'm told that there was an orange couch in her office that quickly became a makeshift bed for naps in the early years of balancing academia. Her children, who I understand are here tonight, welcome Melissa and Sam, then actually decided that the after-school care was far inferior to the kind of interest that was shown within the School of Mathematics and Statistics, and would come in after school every day to participate in the wider academic life of the university. They went on to have very successful careers of their own as a teacher and as a doctor, and we're delighted to have them here tonight in that process of navigating. In the 25 years since, I think uncertainty has been a theme also in a different way. Ivy's made exceptional contributions in really all areas of the university. She's widely recognised as a leading contributor to the statistics group and has played a central role in shaping our current programs and courses. She's implemented the successful Master of Applied Statistics program, which has strong links to local industry and aligns closely with our strategy of producing connected workforce and experienced graduates. Her students have benefited greatly from her teaching, and she has consistently scored very highly in teaching course evaluations. On the research side, Ivy's research focuses on categorical data analysis, which includes ordinal response models, repeated measurements, and cluster analysis. She works at the intersection of theory and application, developing statistical methods to better understand uncertainty, once again, in data. Her work has been applied across a wide range of fields, including clinical trials, education, wellbeing research, and aquaculture. She's widely recognised as an international leader and has an impressive research and engagement record underpinned by having secured nearly $30 million in external funding. She serves as editor, reviewer, and referee and maintains strong relationships with a whole range of international stakeholders, from which she's used to establish internships and support her PhD students. She served as both the head and deputy head of the School of Mathematics and Statistics and made huge efforts in establishing the Centre for Data Science and AI, from which she's the deputy director, further demonstrating her commitment to strengthening this university, to Te Inaugural research and teaching. I think when you look at Ivy's trajectory, it's also worth acknowledging the way that she's navigated uncertainty in that space. Originally from Taiwan, her university path was shaped not by personal choice, but by an unpredictable placement system. Judging by the outstanding career she's gone on to build, I think it's fair to say that the system had chose very well. She went on to complete her master's and PhD in the United States. She chose categorical data analysis for her PhD, largely to align with her husband's planned studies in sociology. Although he later changed direction, the decision proved to be a fortunate one. And after she graduated, there was a strong demand for expertise in categorical data. So to move to the third pillar of uncertainty, we come to the title of her inaugural lecture, The Beauty of Uncertainty, which I think is a fitting reflection on the themes, both personal and professional, from her career. Not only literally, but also metaphorically, she seeks to find meaning in messy data, and it's often seen as a way to find answers to complex questions. Even when the data appears messy, patterns can still be uncovered. She's going to be highlighting some of the methods and also some of the applications in what is inherently interdisciplinary work tonight. And Professor Liu, Ivy, we are delighted to welcome you to the stage. We're very much looking forward to your inaugural lecture.
Thank you for the introduction. Yes, I'm so excited to be here today. I don't want to sit behind the desk. I like to stand here, walk around, and talk to you. So today, I will talk to you about all the uncertainty stories. And although it's a focus on uncertainty, one thing for sure is that you will not see many mathematical formulae. So there will be only one, okay, for sure. So the first uncertainty happened in our everyday life. Everybody know? So every time when jackpot getting bigger and bigger and bigger, we all go to buy lotto tickets, right? So we buy more and more when we have a big jackpot. And do you know what is the chance of getting a jackpot? Okay, 1 in 38 million. So that is the chance. And if you buy 10 lines, you got 10 in 38 million. Not much difference. So we just have some warm up. So now we move to my personal research career and also my research topics. So my career began from 1996. So I got my PhD in 1995. My first paper published 1996. So many of you know I have a famous supervisor, Alan Agresti. He's quite famous in categorical data analysis. So when I look at his supervisor and look at all my academic ancestors, I realize, wow, I belong to a royal family. So let me show you. So he's supervisor, and I want to point out Yesh, I don't know how to say these words, but Yeshi Nemen, okay? So he is the first one set up stats department. So before the stats always belong to part of the math. So he is the first one separate the stats from math and set up the stats department at UC Berkeley. And if you know math and stats, so you know Markov chain, you know Chebyshev inequality. So I can see some smiling face of my students. They all belong to a royal family. But belong to a royal family doesn't mean that you always have an easy success. Okay, look at me. It took me 30 years to become a professor. Okay, so you all be prepared. Right, so my research is centered around these ordinal responses. So let me show you what is the ordinal responses, what is the ordinal data. So in a survey, say if you have to think about all those questionnaire or survey, for example, we ask people this question, I'm satisfied with my life. So the categories from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So this is a typical ordinal data we see a lot in the survey questionnaire. So what made this ordinal response interesting? So if you look at these 5 different categories, one uncertainty is that you don't know the distance between them. So it may be further away from neutral to disagree, or it may be have a bigger distance from strongly agree to agree. So you have no idea about this distance. And for my research, when I analyze the data, I don't need to know the distance. I can incorporate all possible distance into account and then still give you some sensible pattern or conclusion about this data. So back to 1996, my first publication. So this work is about mental Hansel estimator for ordinal responses. So what is it about? This method have been used a lot for case control studies and clinical trial. So let's look at the clinical trial as an example. So the clinical trial means that if you have, say, for a pharmaceutical company, when they have a new drug, they always compare with placebo or existing drug, and they take a sample, say the sample patient, and randomly allocate this patient to take those two, placebo or active drug, and wait for a few months or a period of time and look at whether the job work or not. So you have the success and failure. So this is a traditional approach. So my methodology shows then that you can have ordinal responses. You can have the response from worse all the way to much better. Okay, so it's kind of extension of the binary case to the ordinal case. And also in the clinical trial, sometimes it's very, very hard to recruit enough patients in one clinical center. So you often recruit fewer patients, but you use lots of clinical centers. So you have a lot of clinical centers, and then you might have the situation like that. So my method is just summarize what is the difference between drug and placebo across all clinical centers, but still take the center variation into account. So you allow the center variation, but you still have the method to say, can I say the drug is significantly better than placebo? So take this uncertainty into account to construct the measure. So this is my first piece of research. So that was 1996. And 2003, a bunch of the researchers in education named this method Liu Agresti method, Liu Agresti estimator. Liu is myself, Agresti is my supervisor. So they use that in a totally different field. They use it in education. They call that DIF, differential item functioning. So the idea is similar as a clinical trial. So when you give students a test, say test their mathematical skill, for example, so you want each of the questions to be fair. You don't want the question to be unfair to international students, and only domestic students know how to answer that, right? So the drug and placebo for this case become like domestic students, international students. And if you look at the strata before, when you have different clinical centers, here the strata becomes students' overall ability. So they use that a lot for this education. And after that, I found more than 100 papers and use these particular methods in all sorts of the different application areas, including marketing, psychology, of course, lots of education. So it's a kind of something I didn't expect, something interesting coming up from my research. So my early collaborations start 1996 and 1998. I work at Waikato University. So the person in the center, Nigel, he was a chair at that time. And the right-hand side, David, he worked in experimental design with Nigel a lot. Year 2000, my trains. And we were in Te Papa. And this photo, Alan Gracey, he visited us 2003 and to give a short course at that time. And he was playing with Samantha at that time. Okay, so let's move to my next big topic, is a model-based classroom. So the model-based classroom started with Shirley and Richard. Yeah. So Shirley and Richard started this idea with the binary and the count data. So when they have that methods and afterwards we collaborate together, so we move everything to the ordinal data. And for the ordinal data, I also have important collaborators, Daniel and Louise. They play the big role in this research. So for this direction, we generated 3 successful master grants. So since 2013 until now. So let's talk about what is this classroom, model-based classroom for ordinal data. You just use your imagination. The survey question I mentioned, you just imagine that I have a bunch of the questions asking people about how happy they feel about their life. So you have a bunch of the questions about the life, happiness, and another dimension you think about their happiness about their work. So you can't have 2 dimensions. Actually, the illustration can apply for multiple dimensions. I just use the 2 dimensions to show you the picture easier. So just imagine that you have 2 dimensions. One dimension is how happy people about their life. Another dimension is how happy people feel about their work. So each dot represents individual. So I have a person A, B, C. So the model-based classroom is going to group those individuals based on their similarity on response pattern, okay? So suppose one model may group them into 3 clusters. So now the B and C belong to the same cluster. So we can say they have the same response pattern. Another model may say, how about I group them into 4 clusters? So now B and C belong to different response pattern. Okay. So one uncertainty is that, should we use 3 or should we use 4? So is it 4 cluster is better than 3 clusters? So the model-based clustering can answer the question for you. So we can use the likelihood method to say, is it necessary to use 4 clusters to describe our data, or maybe 3 clusters is good enough? So we can answer that for the model-based clustering. And another thing is a model-based clustering also can show for each individual subject, what is the probability for that subject belong to each of the clusters? So it's not necessary one subject definitely belong to a particular cluster, but it has some probability. This data is teaching evaluation data. So I have 70 students and doing a teaching evaluation based on 10 questions. So we cluster those students into 3 clusters. So you can see that the cluster number 1 is here, and 2 and 3. So the cluster number 3 is quite small. So very few students belong to that cluster. So if you go to those uncertainty, if you go to here, I just zoom in one of the plot. So if you look at the student number 28, so the darker it is the more certain you are. So if you look at the student 28 and this student 27, so they belong to the same cluster with a very, very high probability. But if you look at the 28 with the student number 1, So this is very light. So they belong to the same cluster with the probability only probably 0.4. Okay, so those give you those uncertainty information as well. So based on this model-based clustering. So this idea has been extended to, for example, mistyped data. So your data before, when we look at those questions, is an ordinal response. Your data might be binary, might be counts, might be ordinal, might be continuous. It can be everything combined together, but you still do the clustering for your subjects. So this is one type of extension. Another one is you could think about all the data, you ask people questions longitudinally. So every year you ask the question, the same set of the questions and see whether any pattern has changed. So those are also extension. Another extension is that, so for example, for your data, you only surveyed those people. So you can use their response to the questionnaire and cluster them into 3 groups, right? But how about the people who didn't include, who were not included in your survey? So those are the people who were not included in your survey. Can I predict which cluster they belong to based on maybe their age, their sex, their income, or their other personal information? So I could do that, say predict where the cluster those people belong to, okay? So those are also the extension. So all those extensions generate in total 3 different Marston grants. And along this time, my admin role also evolved. So I start with the program director and then become the deputy head of school and head of school. And since 2023, we have a new center for data science and AI. I became deputy director for that center. So for that data science and AI center, I think that opened my research into kind of different, even broader area. So I work on so many projects in different domains. So let's look at what project I have been working on. So since 2019. So 2019, I have this well-being project. And 2020, I start with those aquaculture project. And from this year, we have a new project, AI for Health. Well-being project. I know Phil is in the audience, okay? So well-being project start 2019, chaired by Phil Morrison. And this is, when we started it, that is based on the University U survey. This is a university well-being survey at Victoria University. So this is a longitudinal study, and we have, if you look at here, this is the 2019. That is our first cohort of students. So they all enter the university as a first-year undergraduate students, 2019. So those are the cohort students 2020. So those are the students who were first-year undergraduate students in 2020, etc. So if you look at this data, so we kind of follow the student for 3-4 years until they leave university, okay? So if you look at this data set, you probably realize there's one interesting thing we could recover from this data. Think about COVID. So here we have a data pre-COVID. We have data during COVID, and we have data post-COVID. So it's a quite interesting data set to work on. I show you just a few things what we have done for this data set. So for example, for the 2019 cohort, we look at the students' well-being. So the students' well-being is not only well-being, is how distressed they are. So you kind of have two dimensions. One is the well-being measure, another one is the distress, how distressed they are. So we cluster the students into 6 groups. So if you look at those 6 groups, so the student in this light blue, they are the most vulnerable students. So we want to know what are the factors which drive the difference across different clusters. So when we work on this data, I think it's not surprise, the students' financial situation will be a driver, and the students' physical health will be a possible driver. So that's true. Both are the big driver to driving those clusters. But the interesting thing is that we found the physical health is even more important than the students' financial situation. Another thing is that I mentioned about pre-COVID and during COVID, we also look at the 2019 and 2020 cohort students. And we find that in terms of the well-being pattern, there are very, very tiny difference between 2019 and 2020 students. Just keep in mind, the data the survey happened in April. So 2020, April is our first lockdown. So we look at the overall pattern, there's no difference. But if we look at deep inside about our data, the COVID did have some impact to our students. For example, if you look at the social connection, we found that 2020, the social connection is very important, but it may not be so important in 2019. So those are lots of the interested funding we got. And of course, this is an ongoing project. We keep working on this data a lot. And next, I will mention the work with Sarah. And so what happened? When we work on this well-being data set, we say, we shouldn't just only focus on Victoria University students. Let's look at the bigger group of students. So we work with Sarah and try to find the information from this integrated data infrastructure, IDI. So we got well-being, and also we look at the university retention as well. So for the well-being, we compared university students and non-university students. They all, from age 16 to 22, something around that. And also we look at the student retention. So those are the work we've done for well-being. So the next domain is agricultural. So for this agriculture, we have 2 big MB grants. So Mon and Bing, they are here. They play a key role for these two big grants. And also I want to mention our collaborator at Cawthorn and Plant and Food. So without them, the project would not be possible because they taught us lots of domain knowledge we didn't know. And also I think that those domain knowledge is very interesting from our view. And so agricultural, what is that? If you look at this chart, it shows the carbon footprint on different type of food. So if you look at the beef or lamb, so every 100 grams per tin, the carbon emission is pretty high compared to those salmon, oyster, and mussels. So for New Zealand, agriculture is very important because it brings quite big economy for New Zealand, and also the cost. If you think about the carbon emission as a cost, the cost is low. So we study king salmon, and we study oysters, and we study mussels for this project. So I couldn't give you lots of detail about each of that, but however, I can show you one of my students' work from the king salmon. So the king salmon, we look at the salmon either is healthy or subclinical or sick. So for the farmer, they really want to know this part. So when the salmon from the healthy becomes subclinical, they want to know that beforehand so they can do something about that. So for this, if you think about ordinal, that is like a 3 different category for the ordinal response. And so what we try to do is we try to find some cheaper variables which can predict those 3 categories, okay? So, when we have if we want to know whether salmon is sick, so often you have to destruct the salmon and get the blood test or get some tissue and do histology, etc. So those are very destructive and also very expensive. So first we want to know whether we can still predict salmon health without kill those salmon. Or even if we have to kill the salmon, can we run some cheaper tests? So if you think about blood tests, they different type of if we want to test different parts or different type, the cost is different. Can we find a cheaper one to answer that? So that is the purpose of this study. Okay, so from 2025, from this year, I was involved in this new project for health. So this is AI for health. So I just say aging, dementia. So I feel that finally I'm going to start something highly related to myself. So what would they lead to? I don't know. I don't know what the result will come up. And so I think it's just everything's still uncertain at this stage, but I'm looking forward to see any useful information coming for all of us. So that is a new project, and for this talk, I want to thank one of my students, Adam. So he made my slides very appealing, okay? I really like his design. But of course, on the other hand, if you dislike my slides, you know who to blame. Okay. So at the end, I really want to thank my colleagues, my friends, my family coming here, especially my students. I have lots of my students here today. And I feel that my journey will not be so happy or beautiful without all of your support. Yeah, thank you very much.
Ivy, come and stand here.
Oh, okay.
You're the
Shall I
star
turn
of the
this
show,
off?
Probably.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nikki Nelson, the Dean of Science and Engineering. It's my very great pleasure, Ivy, on behalf of the university to thank you for your talk tonight, Professor Ivy Liu. after 30 years. You've taken us on a great journey. I've really appreciated both the personal and professional, reminding us of important connections, relationships, collaborations. You've reflected on your students being here. Some of these, I understand, are probably from the Masters of Applied Science also, which you didn't mention tonight, but was something that you've been critical to building. I think the fact that you've got so many students here is a real testament to your achievement as a teacher. They only turn up if they really respect you. Why else would they bother, right? So it's really great to see so many people here supporting Ivy. Well done on your influence. I'm also reminded, of some of my supervision here. You mentioned Shirley Pledger, so I kind of feel like I'm connected to royalty if you were mentioning her. You've talked a lot about uncertainty, whether it's the kind of uncertainty that you've measured or the uncertainty or surprises, let's call it, in your career. But I think the other thing you've demonstrated tonight was the enormous optimism with which you bring to everything you are involved with. And I think that resonates really deeply. It's a really great message for us all to remember the really great reasons that we're here and the great opportunities that we have in our opportunities within academia. And lastly, I'd really like to acknowledge your family who are here, your two daughters, which Nick has mentioned already tonight. I understand also that you're going to be a grandma or a pawpaw. Just pretty exciting for me to get to declare, because normally Nick steals all of the highlights. But what I really liked about that is how your girls have bookended your career to date. You started out talking about them with your pram and on the orange couch, and here we have the next generation coming along. So great reminder, I guess, that it's family that really anchors us on our journey through academia and gives us the opportunity to have our careers in academia. Anyway, I want to thank you for sharing your story with us, the personal and the professional, the insights, and please, all of you, join me in congratulating Ivy, making it to Professor and presenting us with such an amazing talk this evening. My most important job is to invite you through the doors for kai and a drink and to celebrate with Ivy. So please join us next door and carry on the opportunity to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you.